Friends, welcome to my weekly live stream. My name is Jérôme. I'm from the Uno platform, open source project, and I spent about an hour every week taking a look at Uno platform issues and answering questions that are happening on the stream, and talking about the news about .NET and Visual Studio when that happens, like today's release of Visual Studio 17.6 or 7, which is, let me see, I don't remember which version that is. I think it's 17.6.3, a preview 3. So a new version that has been released, and we're going to be taking a look at all of those. And today we're going to be taking a look at one specific feature, which is the writable bitmap on the Uno platform, which is a feature that allows to do writing individual pixels on the surface that you can show on your screen. And some user from the Uno platform has been raising an issue saying that the writable bitmap doesn't do the right thing under Linux. And I'm going to be using WSL just to troubleshoot all this, and I'm going to see where that goes. So I'm going to be using the 17.6 preview 3. It's a very new version. It's been released, I think, a few hours ago. And actually, let's go take a look at the release notes of that version, because I really don't know what's new in that version. So it's that version. So it's been released just today. Every time I try to update the version of Visual Studio, just a few minutes before the stream, living dangerously again. And well, so far it's been good. We'll see if there's something that shows up that doesn't work. So in C++, not super useful for us at that point. We're interested in C# and .NET. There's a few fixes in the Git tooling, debugging, profiling. We have breakpoint groups. Interesting. So being able to group breakpoints and disable them. Okay, that's interesting. Just that. Okay, so just not too much to update. I don't know if they updated something with .NET, if there's a new version there. We're in preview 2, so that there's no update there. So it's that's the version I installed. Maybe there's a version of 7.200, so it's 7.0300. So probably this version has been released as part of the installation of Visual Studio. Okay, so that's interesting. I see a few people have been joining this chat. So I see Jose, Ahmed, Dominic, and McNitz. Welcome everyone. Let's see what we can do today. So so I updated, and just before the stream, I tried to update everything, and I found a small issue with the fonts and our new package with the font fluent. When I update that, it breaks. So I'll probably roll back the change once we get to the writable bitmap. And so where that goes, it's probably something that's related to the newer version of .NET that runs. But just to be sure, I think we have an update to the latest release. So it's probably something that's related to that version. So we're going to take a look at that. And it's probably .NET 8 something, probably .NET 8 issue. Actually, probably should be trying that right away. So let me show you the issue when we build. So if you've been trying to build Uno and you're running on the latest reviews, so I'm going to be removing this. Actually, let's comment it out. It's probably easier. I'm going to close my Visual Studio. We're going to try to see if it actually fails again, just as a result. It may be just a .NET 8 issue. So I closed everything, trying to start again. So we're going to be doing some Skia today, and so I'm loading the Uno UI Skia filter. And we'll see if the same issue shows up. So I removed the Uno Fluent fonts, but let's revert it back and see if we have some restoration that happens. There should be a few issues. So I noticed that in a previous version of Visual Studio, if there were tasks still running in the background, sometimes the build wouldn't start. So we can see that there are a few others that are still running. So let's try it. So I'm going to be running with WSL because the issue has been reported on Linux, but it's unlikely to be a Linux issue, but it's a good excuse to do some Linux there, and using Wayland and the WSL integration in Visual Studio to debug everything under Linux. So in the meantime, while it's building, what do we have? We still do have the issue here with the unable to copy file. So we have a message that says the unable to copy file from that location to that location for some reason. So I wonder if there's something happening with either multiple copies of the same file. That maybe actually go take a look at the build logging. So if you're not aware of that build logging tooling, and if you're new, just take a look at the Visual Studio Marketplace and search for something that's called Project System Tools. And you're going to get that new tool, that tooling here, and allows you to see what exactly is happening inside the build. So when you're building, you're going to be seeing new entries here that are talking about exactly what's building currently. So once the build is done and we get to what we need, we should be able to open individual build files and see what if there are issues, and if we have, let's say, duplicate copies or anything like that that may happen during this particular build. So we're almost there. So it's that project that fails, and I've removed the pre-release, so it rules out the fact that it may be .NET 8. Okay, so I'm having a different error. Oh no, it's the same error. Okay, so we're getting the Fluent asset still failing. And now let's go take a look at the build logging and see if it's something that fails on our end. Or actually, it's not that build, it's the other one. It's the first one that fails, if I remember correctly. Okay, so actually, no, it's not. Oh, I think they both fail. Okay, so the first one is the Skia one, and the Skia project, and the other one is the Skia GTK project. So they both fail. So if we take a look at the copy out of date source items to the output, we can see that we're trying to create hard links from one file to the other. And for some reason, the copying fails because input file is newer than the output file. Okay, so for some reason, it may be that the date of that file is incorrect. We could try, maybe it's a transient issue. It may happen. But if we search for that file in the list, maybe do we see if it's multiple times there? No, it's not. So we can see it's only once in the list. So maybe we can try to find if that file is present multiple times. That could be as well. If we do have multiple copies, that may happen. So we can see that we're trying to copy it from here. We're getting the file, but it doesn't look like it's locked in any way. Okay, so maybe the file is present in the output folder and shouldn't be. So we can probably just try to remove it. So okay, so the folder is locked for some reason. The file is locked as well. It says access denied. Okay, so let's not troubleshoot that one there. Probably not super important. So we're just gonna be going through the fact that the file is locked, and then some of the icons are not going to show up in the samples app. It's not a big deal at that point. Okay, so if I start with WSL, what will happen is that we have the sample application inside of Uno, which is an application that contains all the not say tooling, but all the controls that we've been developing inside of Uno, and so that allows to test those controls in the environment of Uno itself. And it allows us to validate all sorts of things, that most notably the fact that we have a runtime testing tooling. So it's basically a unit testing environment that allows to run all the tests that are available, but running inside of the app. It allows us to do regression testing and unit testing in general. And we run that as part of the CI. And that application is also used to do UI testing. And the UI testing is particularly important for us because it allows to use, we're using Xamarin UI Test and Selenium to do testing in the app when it runs. So that's the kind of features that we're getting there. Okay, so this is the app. And we can see that. So I'm running on a 4K screen here, and the scaling that I've been applying is 225. So that means that the content of everything on the screen is way bigger than it should. I see Ahmed have been talking about the PowerPoint file optimist. Yes, I could probably use that one. I have not installed it on this machine, but yes, I could definitely do that. Well, the thing is that for that particular file that's been locked, most probably it's an issue with either our own tooling, or maybe it's a file system issue. Could be sometimes the NTFS is doing something weird. So I'll probably take a look at that later on. But yes, definitely a good idea. So if you don't know about those power toys, definitely take a look. So we can see that the application is actually running under Linux, and you can see that it's MNT, CS, and my path. So to get to that content, and I think we do have some writable bitmap testers here available somewhere. There we go. We have writable bitmap, and we should be able to test that everything works properly, at least for those. So when you click the button, writable bitmap is updated and validated. Test, make sure source. Okay, so we can see that there's, I don't know if it's the right behavior. It doesn't say. Or square below. Okay, so there's that, and there's multi-invalidate. Okay, so it looks like it's doing the right thing, at least visibly. So maybe it's incorrect. I don't know. We're gonna have to validate. Those are used as part of runtime tests. So they're used to validate the content, and so far we haven't had any issues with this, but maybe there's something wrong with it. But what we're gonna do is take a look at what that particular code is doing, but regarding the repo that has been provided by the user here. So the user says that the image is stretched, the control stretching behavior is incorrect, and we should be adjusting it. So let's go take a look at that. So I think there was a video of the behavior. So let's go find that one out. Oh, there you go, writable bitmap stretch. There was a video, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was no, there was, oh, there's the video. Okay, so the video says, so there's a bit of drawing that happens, and then the content is just moving up for some good reason, so some not so good reason. So probably going to be troubleshooting that particular issue. Okay, so now we do know that everything works properly with WSL. That's what we wanted to have originally. So now we're going to be taking a look at the issue that was opened by the user, the repo sample that was opened by the user, and we're going to try to figure out if there's something that we can extract from that app and put back into our sample app, so we can use we can do some regression testing with it. Now, mind you, it may not be that easy yet, because we're not rendering using a scaling that's not 100, so it may not behave properly. But let's try. We're going to try to find that out. Okay, so we have a Windows app. We have a core project that uses MVVM Toolkit. Interesting. And then it's a key ahead and a share project, and that looks great. Let's see what this does. So same thing, we're going to be running the GTK app. We're going to be using the GTK app under WSL, because it works that way, and we're going to try to reproduce the behavior. So let's go. So the app is doing An image buffer. It's trying to get an image, writable bitmap. Timer for what it seems. There's image grabbing here. Okay, file stream is invalid, so it's probably trying to read some image that's not available. Or maybe... Okay, so there's something here. So is the image... Maybe the image is not available, so we have image bitmap here. So what file did we try to get? So it tries to load a resource ID. It's called image2.bmp. And it looks like I don't have the BMP2. We don't have the second bitmap. So I don't know what that is. Is there a second bitmap? So maybe there's a attached file must copy the image3 file BMP in a folder where the application is being executed. Okay, so we'll need to copy the files. So do we have the bitmaps, all the bitmaps in the sample itself? I didn't see them, but maybe. Okay, there they are. Okay, so I'm gonna copy those files. Probably we should be able to use just the files as content. They're here, so we should be able to put them. So we can include the files and then set them content. They should be in the right output folder if the build worked correctly. No, it did not. Let's rebuild. I didn't see the app building, so let's rebuild. So the files should be in the output folder. There they are. So is it working better this time? No, it's not. It says OpenGL is not supported in this system. Okay, so that is interesting, but we could probably, that's probably because of some WSL feature. So we can change that, render surface. No, I don't think it was the capital. It's just the fact that the files were not there. So that works properly this time. Let's go use software rendering for now. I think we're gonna have to go take a look at Vulkan as well now. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about the fact that Vulkan is eventually or already replacing OpenGL, and Skia is having a Vulkan backend that is quite interesting. So okay, so we have a start stop and toggle stretch. Okay, so we got a stretching. I don't know if it's supposed to be doing something. Okay, so let's try to run the app. So the app is let's go see what the Windows app does, because I don't know, to be honest. Okay, so the Windows app does. Okay, so it's not supposed to blink. It's not supposed to blink. And doesn't seem like we need to do anything there, but toggle stretching is not supposed to be blinking. So we can see here that it's actually doing the right behavior. I don't know. So there's no scrolling here, but if we take a look at the video again, it shows. Okay, so it moves around, but there's something that shows up at the top, but for some reason it's not showing up on my end. But the thing is that when we're looking at the version that runs on Skia, we see that it flickers. So maybe that's the issue that we need to be taking a look at. If I take a look here, we can see that well, maybe it doesn't show on the screen when on the stream. Actually, maybe. It probably should be seeing it. So it actually flickers, and it's not correct. So we're going to be taking a look at that. And I'm not too sure what the images look like. So let's go see. So the first image is this. Second image is this as well, and then the last image is with something in the middle. But it should not be flickering as it is. I'm not seeing, I don't know if there's something that draws in the middle. So it looks like by the video there should be something that shows up, but let's see. So in the shared project, if I take a look here, there's a grid, there's a text box, there's a frame, there's a gradient in between. There are two buttons at the top. I'm not too sure what's supposed to be drawing there. So it's supposed to be single frame. Single frame is a control that shows up as my image. And it's supposed to be display image. So display image is here. Okay, so it shows up here. And when we change the stretch, we go from none to uniform. I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to be doing, because even the Windows app is doing something interesting there. Because the stretch is doing what it's supposed to be doing, so I'm not too sure if there's I'm not seeing the same behavior that the video was showing. So it's interesting. So we have something that moves up. Looks like it's the drawing that's done above, but I don't see anything that's related to drawing. Maybe, let's see. You have the grabbing here. So it's just marshalling and decoding. So I don't see the image there. So it's a bit difficult there, because it actually is debugging. It's actually doing the right thing from what I can see. If I take a look at the Windows app, aside from the blinking that I can see here, so there's no blinking in the Windows version, and in the Linux version or the GTK version, there's some blinking that happens. So if I take a look again, so it shows, so what's interesting is that the stretching is not exactly doing the same thing as it does on Windows. Because it's supposed to be uniform, but for some reason it's not behaving the same way. So we can see here that the stretching is not behaving correctly. And none is doing what it's supposed to do. So it looks like the image is behaving correctly, but it's the stretching, the original stretching, that behaves incorrectly. Okay, so that one is interesting. So there's still a little bit of flickering that happens. Okay. Yeah, so that's probably just that. We're gonna try to see if there's something that we can figure out with regards to why the image flickers. Okay, so let's try to change that flickering that happens and see how we can alter that behavior. So let's go try to in our sample app. We're gonna be creating a new sample that tries to replicate the behavior of the image changing, because we didn't see that happening. We didn't see that happening in the samples app. It didn't flicker that way. So we're going to try to do the same thing and try to see if we can replicate the behavior. So let's see. We have that into, it's probably going to be image, so in media. And I don't know. I'm not sure if we do have. Let's see if we can have writable bitmap. So we have the render target bitmap here. writable bitmap. So it's not that one. So writable bitmap is called image brush. Let's use this one. We're going to use randomize. So writable bitmap multi-invalidate. So this one is here. So we can see that there's a UI test for this one. And we have the randomizing here. So it's in this control, and the behavior, not the behavior, but the image itself is update source. Okay. So that looks good. Okay, so what we can do is create a very large image, and that one I can see that we've been doing some interesting things here. Probably should be changing that code at some point, but let's see if we do have that one. So image source writable bitmap invalidate. What's this control doing? Okay, so it looks like we're doing some internal APIs for this, but this particular code should be enough. So okay, so we're going to be using this part. So we're going to duplicate this code and try to see if we can replicate the behavior of the update that we're getting. So we have image source and writable bitmap. So let's go and duplicate that specific control. And let's call it with stretch. Good. Okay, so there's no folding for now, but we'll see. Okay, so that one should be good enough. So we're going to make a bigger image. So we can see here that we're making very small image. So let's make a very large one for now. And let's see when we do the update if it actually resizes properly. So our control is called stretch and writable bitmap. There you go. We're just writing some value from the half of the screen, which is fine. We should be seeing something that shows replicate here, and we should be having our content. So that should be enough. So let's run the app, and it should be pretty similar to this particular sample. I see that I have not changed the name of the control here. So I can see that Jose has been hacked somehow, because there's a weird message showing up. Interesting. It looks like account swapping or selling or things like that is still very much alive. Oh, it looks like my camera is off for some reason. Okay, that's interesting. Should I do? Let me try to figure this one out while we're still building. So probably something that has to do with how the camera is behaving. That is much better. I heard a USB noise happening. Okay, so so we have to go to the variable bitmap again, and we should be having a new one. So that's the stretch one. And so far it's splitting in the middle, but I don't know if the image is actually stretching properly, to be honest. So let's go back and see. The image doesn't have any stretch, so maybe that's the issue. So if we took a look at the sample that the users provided, you can see that the stretch is uniform. So it's probably, let's use that stretch instead. And see if it's the cause of the issue, and if we can reproduce it. It built really quickly. It's very strange. I think I'm missing something here. I think it's related to the feature that I enabled last week, which is the support for the ability to use reference assemblies for all projects, so that the build goes faster. But I'm not sure if it's the right if it's doing the right thing here. All because of the new version of Visual Studio. We'll see. Okay, so it's taking a little bit longer, which is what I expected. So let's go to our recents. Oh no, recents not working, interestingly. So it's the second one. So it's still not flickering. The interesting thing is that it's doing, so maybe it's because it's a square. Maybe because it's a square. So we have the bitmap invalidate. What is the application doing on the other side? So it's creating a bitmap. It's setting the source. Oh, it's putting the source every time. So what we have here is not the same thing, because we have the bitmap and we're not generating a new bitmap. We're just changing the content of the bitmap. Okay, we're gonna try to do this. We're gonna update the source every time, and we're gonna change the color as well, so that it shows up properly. And let's use a random value. So we're in .NET 7. We should be using the shared, and we do have a shared value of this. Next. So we have the next byte next here. It's an integer. Let's do this like this for now. And let's put this here. Span of byte. And we should be having a different color every time we press the button. And because the image should be the same, but because we're going to be reassigning the image every time, it should be behaving differently. So let's see if we get something different this time. So there's that new feature here that's been introduced in 17.6, which is the some kind of contextual information about where you're in when you scroll. So it says that currently. I mean, update source in the class and that namespace. That's pretty nice. I've seen that in VS Code. It's very interesting to see it coming to Visual Studio. Okay, so it's failing point release. So it says that I'm failing line 44. What did I do? Oh, yeah, because I put it at the end, of course. Went a bit too far. So I don't know if you've seen, but at the bottom there was the Linux logo. And I'm not too sure. It's supposed to be showing the Linux, the Uno logo instead. It looks like WSL is not picking up the app icon when the app is running on Linux. It shows up as a Linux app. Maybe there's a way to change that somehow. Have you been for the people that are still on the stream? Have you been experimenting with WSL and Wayland? It's actually pretty interesting to see what it does. Okay, so it's not refreshing. Not refreshing at all. Okay, so the image is probably either too big or not showing at all. So let's make it a little bit smaller, or maybe we need to be flushing the content somehow, because there's no flush, so we need to do the update. Okay, so we probably should be setting the source afterwards, because otherwise it won't refresh. Okay, so let's try it that way. So there's an API that's part of WinUI that we have not implemented yet in Uno, and it's kind of a not well-known API, and it's been used by Skia#. And if we go take a look at the UWP implementation of Skia#, we search for the Skia XAML canvas, there's a pointer something, if I remember correctly, that does exactly that. I think it's the get pixels information. So if we search for that and UWP, yeah, we get the pixel buffer, and then we get the get byte buffer. And in WinUI, even in WinUI, there's the same thing. But the idea is that there's a that is new. Okay, so that one is even different. So that's the WinUI implementation of the feature. But if we take a look at the get byte buffer, there's another one that uses that one is even more different. So there's a buffer. So that's for UWP. Let me duplicate. Let's see if they're actually that different. I thought there was another one. Okay, so in UWP, you could cast the iBuffer to iBuffer byte access, and then do a buffer method that would give the pointer. And in WinUI, you can cast that buffer as an iBuffer byte access, which is the same thing, but you can just do a .buffer on it. That's interesting. So it's a little bit easier to use. And we don't have that API yet, but it looks like it's something that we will need to be implementing, so that we can make that implementation in Uno somehow faster, without having to do that kind of things, or use that API, which is using the pixel buffer as stream, which is an API that's a lot slower than just using a byte array access. So we may be implementing that very soon, so that it goes faster. Okay, so we have that API that shows up, and when I click the button, you can see that the color is changing, but it's not flickering. So that is very interesting, because it's supposed to be flickering. And the image is large enough, so maybe it's too fast to update. Let's see. If we go back to the sample from the user, we were doing a bitmap. Oh, it's using the invalidation. So it's really using the validate feature that we had originally. And it's supposed to be doing the same thing. So it's very interesting to see. The only thing here is that there's a dispatch. Maybe that's caused by the dispatch, but the image is not reset every time, so that's not it. Okay, so if I roll this back a little bit, we're going to be reverting to our original behavior, which was we create an image, original image, that we only update through bitmap invalidation. But for some reason, there's something else that is happening, because the image should be flickering when it changes sizes, but maybe it's because the images are not at the same size. Maybe that's that, but no, it's not supposed to be doing that either. Because we have when we have created the bitmap, it's behaving the same way. Maybe it's because I'm not using the same APIs. Could be. So we have the bitmap writing using the stream writer. So maybe it's caused by this. So let's use the API that's above. So instead of using the pointer updates, we're going to be using this one. And we still do need to have a change of color so that we do see that something is happening. And let's try it again. So if we take a look at the way image is built, particularly with regards to the bitmap invalidation. So when we're under WASM and Skia, we're just doing invalidate source. Okay, so AsStream is not available. Looks like we need that somewhere else. Okay, so AsStream is not available, so maybe I'm missing something here. It's an API that we're providing. Probably just missing the API. Okay, so we need that import. Oh, it was there already. Just commented out. So if we navigate again, so the bitmap invalidation, we're going to go to invalidate source, and then we're requesting open. And then we're trying to read the image where it comes from. So in that context, we're inside of an image source. We're going to try to go and figure out when we're navigating into the sources to see what's actually being where we are navigating to. So when we're using the invalidate method. Okay, so writable bitmap again. It's definitely not flickering here, so looks like we're missing something. So let's go see what we do in invalidate and see maybe if we can dig up that a little bit further. Okay, so when we're invalidating our bitmap, we're going to invalidate source. Do we have do have one subscription. We're requesting the open. And we're trying to copy the pixels from some image data that's empty. And we're copying from the writable bitmap everything that's in the buffer memory to the surface here. It looks like the sizes are correct. We don't have any target size. So it looks like it's doing the right thing here. Oh, did you? I don't know. Oh, so it was in the video. So maybe you didn't see it, but the image was actually. Well, that was interesting. So maybe that's the refresh that does the issue. So let me see. Ah, that's interesting. The image was bigger for a short period of time. So when I do the invalidate here, and I look at the image, it's full colored. Okay, so that may be one of the issue then. It could be that when we're remeasuring the image, we're rendering it in the full size when we should not, and that's where we can take a look at. So let's see. We have the image source. Let's go into image control. So the image control is in Uno image control here, and we have a version for Skia. And we have a source change, so that one is probably not changed. Let's see if we refresh, do we go through? We don't go through our change, the source change here, but let's see, maybe we're going through the measurement size. So if we have a measure override, so let's go into a measure override as well as the range override and see if we go through all of either of those. We go through a measure override, so that's interesting. So that means that we're measuring the image. For some reason, it got invalidated. Probably because we changed the content. So we said the image is different, so let's refresh everything. That's probably a bit too heavy. Particularly considering that we have a writable bitmap, and the writable bitmap is not supposed to be changing in size. So it's supposed to be always the same size. So we're setting, that's a bitmap source. We're setting a pixel width and height, which are the same as the previous height. We're saying that it's supposed to be 200, 200. And then we enter the override at the end, for which we calculate everything to get the positioning of the image correctly. And then we change the sprite size, and we can see that the sprite size was 200 already, and it still is 200 already. It still is 200. It was positioned at 0. There's no transform that needs to happen. Oh, yes, there is a transform that needs to happen. Interestingly, the matrix is an identity. And I'm pretty sure the image should not be an identity, because we can see here that the identity is different. And yeah, it's supposed to be 1/10 of its original size. So that means for some reason we get a surface brush here that gets its matrix reset. So we're gonna have to find out why. And let's see, do we have a transform matrix that's being modified somewhere else in there? We don't have anything of that sort. So maybe we're recreating the surface brush. Let's go see what we're doing here. Are we changing matrices anywhere else? So the only way we're changing it is through... Well, that is very interesting. Okay, so maybe we're changing the surface brush. That could be, because it may be a new version of surface brush because we changed the content of the source. Okay, so that could be. That is why. Okay, there you go. So we have it. So we have changed. We're going through the fact that the surface has changed, but we're recreating surface brush, but we're losing the matrix that resizes the image. So that means that if there's any kind of any kind of rescheduling or rendering that may happen in between, then we're losing the size of the image, even though it hasn't changed. And we're going through this because we're mentioning that the image actually has opened, but it has not. So that's where it gets interesting. So maybe what we could do is say that if we do have a surface brush that already exists, we could try to reuse the previous scaling. What I find interesting is that the images should not be showing without that scaling originally, because there's it's not supposed to have been set with something, or because it's been set before and then its content is set, but the brush was not changed. So let's see if we take a look at the sequence. If we take a look at the sequence of things that are happening, we click on the button. We're going through the invalidate here. And what the invalidate does is that it updates the source. So we're requesting open. And by doing so, what we're doing is that we're updating the pixels right away. But we're not changing, we're updating the pixels right away, which means that there may be time for the rendering engine to display the image originally with the wrong size. And that is a problem. So what we may need to do is to not show the surface unless it's been arranged properly. That could be something that we could do. And that's the thing. It's the surface itself is not supposed to be showing anything until it's actually materialized properly. So let's see if we change this. So we have a try open source async that's available here. And so we're setting the surface pixel. So maybe there's a way for us to change this and have a have it hidden, maybe. Let's see, what do we do in that copy pixels? So this composition surface is an SK image, and it's part of a probably larger piece that is part of a writable bitmap. So we're making an image data from composition surface here. So we're in image data. So that's not what we're looking for here. So when we're trying to display the image, so there's another piece that says that it's supposed to be showing the image somewhere. Okay, so we have an image sprite with the brush. So we're setting the sprite. So maybe we should be hiding the sprite until it's actually being displayed properly. That we should be able to do. So let's say we have the sprite here, and this is the sprite is a sprite visual. So we could probably change. So I think it has an opacity. or I think it should. Where did it go? Okay, there you go. Okay, so opacity, and then we're going to be saying that the opacity is 0. When we change the source, we're going to be creating it. We're going to create it completely transparent. And so when we do change this, when we do change the source of our opacity here, when an image source changes, we're setting the opacity to empty because we just created the image, but it's not been materialized properly. And then once we have arranged it, we can set the opacity of that image sprite again. So we're measuring the image, and then we're arranging the surface afterwards. Once we have set the transform matrix, we can probably set it right away because we do know that the opacity is going to be. We have computed everything properly, and we will not be rescheduling anything in between, so it will provide us with the right sequence. So we set the opacity to 1, and then we set the transform matrix again. That is looking great. Okay, so let's try it again. So this time, what we do know is that we have a sequence of things where we set the value of the new pixel buffer. And then in some cases, the rendering has time to display parts of the content that has not been scaled properly to the screen because we haven't gone through the arrange override that sets the transform matrix of the surface brush that's showing the image in the image. That's the idea. So what we're trying to do here is to hide the sprite that shows that the sprite that uses the brush that has the image inside until the image is actually arranged with the right transform matrix. That should be enough. And once the app starts, so it was not easily visible even locally on the screen. So it was showing up when we were doing when we were manipulating the test with the with the debugger. So we're going to be doing the same thing here. It looks for now that nothing shows up. So that's a regression. That's a regression. So let's see. We have our opacity set to 0. We have our arrange override. We're setting our opacity to something else. We're setting our transform matrix. And then we have something here. Okay, so for some reason, when I was clicking originally, it was not showing anything. Oh, it's probably because the image was, because the green was white, so it was 0. So that's probably why it was doing that thing. Okay, so you can see that once I'm out of, actually you cannot see it because I haven't put the breakpoint to the right place. Okay, so if I click update here, before there was something that was showing up here, and we can see that now the image has disappeared, and it actually does not show anything, and we'll come back again. So interestingly, that will still do flickering, and I'm not too sure exactly what the WinUI team has been doing under the hood. And that means that while this fix is actually avoiding the flickering, of the size, it will still not avoid a flickering with some temporary removal of the image. That means that the image will go blank and then back to it's going to go blank or transparent back to its target update, and that's not good. That's not the right behavior that we're trying to get. So I wonder if we should be swapping the image at the last possible time, or maybe swapping with the previous version of the image brush or something like this, because we do know that we have. So we're exchanging the sprite image here, so that it actually doesn't show anything. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not here. It's when the image changes. So we're talking about changing. So we're setting the opacity here to 0. Because we don't have the previous image brush. But the thing is that it actually shows everything right away, which is incorrect. So I wonder if we should be doing all of this in a different location. And so when I'm saying different location, I mean actually changing the brushes and image sprites once we do know that we have a newer version of the image that needs to be shown, so that we don't need to swap the content. And that is a very interesting update to make. There may be concurrency issues as a result, because we may be changing subscriptions and sources in different places, but it would make for smooth changing of images and not having a flicker of something that disappears completely and then back to something else. So what we can assume is that the measuring and arrange are going to be happening in the same dispatcher loop. So that means that there's not going to be any discrepancy between the two. So what we may do is determine that when we're measuring, if a new image has been created here, we should be actually storing this image somewhere and say the image needs to be changed, and then we recreate. We basically execute everything that happened here immediately in the measure override, so that we don't make the image sprite disappear completely. So that may be a better fix to do in that context, instead of trying to manipulate the image sprite here. Okay, so that is interesting. Let's try to do that quickly. So we should be storing the image data. I don't think we're storing that image data anywhere. So let's put it here quickly to see if we can prove that it works properly. So we have a pending source. So we're not in nullable context here, so that won't work. So we have a pending source, and then we're going to be doing something like this. And we can move all of this in this method. We're going to create that little method. The UNO solution is too big. Definitely too big. Takes a bit of time just to have IntelliSense show up. We try to optimize that a little bit, but in smaller applications it's quite fine, but in larger app it's a bit more difficult. Okay, so we have try process pending. So if we have a pending source, then we can use the pending source Okay. There it is. We have a new, so we're going to be raising image failed and image opened and failed when the measure. Actually quite interesting. So we have a different behavior here. It's probably because the image source is not what we think it is, and because it's not image source, it's image data. Okay, so we have image data. And we're talking about pending image. Okay, so that should be enough. And so pending source actually, so pending source is not nullable, so it won't help. We're going to be using has data instead. And once we're done with the pending source, we're going to be resetting everything, saying that so we don't need to invalidate measure here. And it looks like we're going to have to move that back to the original method that we had here. So we need to invalidate measure once we do have the source that has been updated. And then we're done. We can remove the opacity change. And we need to reset the pending source to something that is empty. Okay. So now we have moved the code that updates the UI outside of the source the source subscription. So with image source is raising an event that says the image has changed, do something. And what we're doing here is that we're delaying the application, the actual modification of the underlying composition API's sources and brushes until we can get to something that is synchronous in the measure override. So that's interesting because it's going to be something that we can have. We're going to have a hard time unit test because we don't know. This is a timing related issue, and while for now we may be able to do it because some of it is synchronous, at some point in the future it will not be synchronous. So we're going to have a hard time validating that the behavior is the right one. So it will need some actual some visible validation. Okay, so we have the invalidate here. And if we're looking at the arrange here, nothing happens. So we have a new color. If we click update, we can see that we're now in arrange, but the image has not changed. So it's still visible using the previous content of the image, which is fine. And when we continue, well, actually the image was the same. So let's try it again. The color was the same. So this is a full green. And if we continue, that one is less green. So it doesn't show very much, but that's what it was. Let's try it one more time. Full green. Still full green. And then it goes away to a very faded green that we almost don't see. So that's probably a better fix now, since we're doing the processing of the underlying visuals in the pending sources, so we don't have a flickering that happens when the content of the image has been updated. So so it looks definitely better than it was before. So that's it for today. We've dug into a lot of the image and composition and writable bitmap and all sorts of low-level rendering of images. That was pretty interesting, and we have I think we do have a good solution here that will probably end up in a PR very soon. So I hope you enjoyed it, and until next week, happy coding. Bye for now.